Hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 45 of The Real Estate Show. I'm Cherise Selley, and with me is Judy Steenland. And boy, last week, it's like we started, and I felt like we had been talking for 1 minute, and that was it, right?
That's right.
There's
it went so fast.
So much to say about this dynamic and unprecedented time in our real estate in our real estate world. And I thought it was so interesting that you brought up about interest rates as they're climbing. And we're shooting this podcast on April 20th, everybody. So interest rates are going to be far different when you're listening to this than what they are now. But as you mentioned in the last episode, rates are at what?
5.25 roughly, and expecting to several more jumps.
Yes, and that's been the biggest hike since what year?
1994, biggest and fastest hike since 1994.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So people, I know that it's a wild ride, and so many people are waiting for that bottom to fall out, but it is still a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
We certainly have the demand without the supply still. That's what's keeping prices going and going right now. Are they going to begin to stabilize when interest rates continue to climb? I think that we may start seeing it, but not anytime soon. Not yet.
Yeah. And I don't see that we're going to increase our inventory so much to not see those multiple offers. I just think that the buyer pool, they're just going to have to readjust their price points.
Exactly.
But we still have the number of buyers.
Yes, I agree with that. Before we keep going forward, let's talk about a few stats. Because as this podcast is being recorded, the average price of a home in El Paso County is close to $540,000. And I'm going to take two more zip codes for this week and talk about the 30-day average for their sold prices and their average listing price. In the 80906 area, which would be down southwest, like the Broadmoor area and the neighborhoods beyond, the average list price from 320 to 419 is 647, 861. And the sold price says that it's 645, 792 for the last 30 days. Now sometimes there's a big price reduction on a few homes, especially these really high-end homes that may alter that differential. So I would still expect the average differential to be closer to that 3% mark if you took out some of the extremes.
Right.
And then in the 80918 zip code, which is, more central in Colorado Springs, a lot of 70s homes are in that area. The average list price is $461,742. 742. The average sold price at $490, 388. So look at that. When you're more into that below average price point in the city, then it looks like the differential is averaging at about 6.42%. So over 6%, almost, going into 7% plus over list is what a buyer could expect to go over on average. So you may have to go beyond that to get the home.
Right. Which may mean that you have to lower your price bracket. So if you're at the high end of your qualifying range, you might have to drop that range just to be able to escalate.
It's so smart. And, one thing that I think we need to point out is, Judy, you and I have a few great lending resources that we can offer clients on two things. One, it's called a lock and shop, so that buyers are able to lock in an interest rate before they keep climbing, and then they can identify a home. That's not available with every loan officer or every institution for lending out there, but there are some programs that will do a lock and shop. And if you don't know them and you're looking for that help, we are happy to refer you to some that do that type of program. And there is another program that has been unprecedented for certain people, and it is a program where an actual lending company will pay for a home in cash for the buyer so that the buyer can bring a cash offer to the table and they can compete against the other, like in one case, I had 10 offers and 62 showings. So that buyer, if a buyer was able to pay cash, they would have moved to the very top depending on what their cash offer was,
Right.
at the very top of the parameter there are, then what happens is that lending company will do the 30-year permanent financing on behalf of that buyer after that buyer's, let's say they have a contingency and they have a home to sell.
Right.
The buyer does. Then they go on to do their loan with this company. They're able to have the company pay cash, then do the loan with the company. And that has been a very creative way to win in this market above a lot of offers that have a traditional loan.
Right. Well, and that contingency, we go back to that. I mean, it's, if you've got a contingency on an offer right now, you move, like it's probably not even a consideration.
I mean, literally, as I'm stacking offers, that, and you are too, that goes to the very bottom.
The sellers really aren't interested in that because most likely they're needing to buy a property on the other side of that, and they can't wait.
And think about the risk on this contingency right now with interest rates changing and a buyer coming in, and it might be the most solid home in the, everything seems to sell eventually in this market, right?
Yeah.
But it's the risk.
Yeah.
That happens right now because things are, a seller is going to look at their least amount of risk.
Yeah. And I would say just even on that point of one thing a buyer can really do to put their offer forward above others is be flexible on transfer of the
possession date.
Sorry, it completely lost
It's okay.
Yes, if they can be flexible and offer up to a 30, 45 day lease back, it's really helpful.
You know what's amazing, Judy? After all this time, I can read your mind.
I know.
And it's pretty brilliant. So let's shift into one subject that I think is so important. We can't neglect the elephant in the room discussion right now. And it's called buyer regrets.
Yeah.
And there are, almost 50% or so of new buyers polled by NAR, I believe it was NAR that polled it, have regrets on buying their home. Mm-hmm. And another company went in and actually did a survey. It's called Home Light, and they worked with a third party to survey 1,620 people who bought a home within the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. And they got some really interesting results about what are buyers regretting the most.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through all of them, but Judy, you and I almost know this instinctually, but this is part of why we're doing these podcasts. We want buyers to think and be prepared and to let us help you help yourself before you get to these stages.
That's right. And I feel like even if a buyer is very, this is not their first home, it is the first time in a market like this. So we're having to re-educate buyers and sellers on what's happening today.
And we're all going through uncharted waters together, but there's ways to be more equipped.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Number one buyer regret, I can't say that quickly, it's overpaying. 22% of everybody polled felt like they overpaid. Mm-hmm. Now imagine though, that was 12 months ago. They might not feel that today. I wonder if they got that new poll today, if they would say, oh, I don't feel that way. But
yeah, because they've already built equity in their homes.
Yes. So that's the number one. Number two, it's at the very same number as number one, 22%. Maintenance. Unexpected maintenance.
Right.
And we'll get back to that in a minute because you have a very good point about that.
Yeah.
And then the number three thing, decided too quickly. People, you have to decide almost before you walk into a home these days.
Right. You have to kind of know what your number's going to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they decided too quickly. That part of that is get prepared ahead of time before you write offers. Get to know neighborhoods. Take personal responsibility in looking at properties as far as driving and understanding where you're buying.
Yeah.
So another one, underestimated the total cost to own. They underestimated their taxes, their insurance, and how that would affect their payment. Mm-hmm. And then the next one, and I'll just leave it here, 13% said that the layout of the home was not conducive to their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty solvable, that one right there. You don't have to say yes to a layout that doesn't work for you. But let's quickly go back to the maintenance part, Judy.
Yeah, so that's one of the main, a huge element of a strong offer right now is waiving inspections and or waiving the ask,
objection.
basically. Yeah, the objection. So while they might have the right to have the inspection done, the expectation is that they're not going to ask for repairs. And what we're hearing is that there are buyers that have entered into older properties, made these waivers of inspection, and then find out that they have a major system that has to be replaced or a major expense or repair when they just use the bulk of their cash for the difference in what they had to pay for the house.
That's right.
Yeah.
So do the hard inspections.
Yes.
Don't waive doing your
Right.
inspections.
Right. Reserve the right to inspect even if you waive the objection.
I agree with that because you don't have to ask them to fix anything. But if you don't know what you're getting into and you don't call a few of the contractors related to a flaw with the home so that you know ahead of time, you don't want to be caught with that knowledge after you buy.
Yeah.
You got to be smart on the front end of things.
That's right. And for sellers who are selling, if they've done any of this maintenance or had these systems checked out, go ahead and give your agent the paperwork so we can
Please.
upload that. And
Yes.
that gives buyers more confidence to waive that
I think it
inspection.
builds trust and they get
Yeah.
better offers when they've maintained their homes.
Yeah.
So talk quickly. There's something really important that we need to talk about on the other side of this. Seller regrets.
Well, I think one seller regret in this market is that they started too high.
Yes.
And if you start too high, it's not good for anyone.
I agree with that. I think another one is comparing themselves to another home that maybe they haven't put the work into themselves in their
Yes.
home.
Yes.
So when they're looking online and they're measuring their home to like a home that's been completely remodeled or
Right.
refurbished, or, we do a whole lot of pre-listing renovations on some homes. And when sellers listen to that, like we just had one that put $17,000 into a property. I know that based on all the comps, first of all, we listed be a little bit higher than where the comfort zone seemed to be for them, but we got there. We got to that price, and then we shot it out of the park beyond that price.
Yeah.
So that 17, it actually came back as 50 grand.
Yeah.
But they did the work.
Right.
So if a seller is comparing themselves to an outcome that they expect and then they don't do the work, they're not going to get the same result.
Yeah. It's not just square footage, people.
Right. It's not price per square foot. It's all of the other variables of doing the work. Doing the work will pay off.
Yeah.
But sellers don't regret not getting the money that you want out of a sale because you didn't do the work. Do the work first.
Yeah.
What else, Judy? Can you think of anything else?
I think the biggest thing right now that I'm personally dealing with is just educating sellers on why it's important to either list conservatively or right on the money as far as what the house should appraise for, because we're seeing this interest rate impact, and we're going to see houses, I think, sit a little bit longer if we're not strategic in pricing.
So if it's overpriced,
Yeah.
there's too much elasticity in the sense of there's no way that you're pulling back the arrow to get the traction for the arrow to you're not pulling back the bow for the arrow to get the traction.
Yeah.
When you're pricing it right, it's like you're creating this tension that will create a shot that is straight.
Yeah, and it could escalate higher than that higher price that you initially wanted to start with if there is that much competition.
I agree. I'm seeing it every time.
Yeah.
So top condition and then right pricing can lead to almost beyond expectations of offers. But when you're pricing it to what you hope the highest offer will be,
yes, then there's no room for movement.
Exactly. You're not allowing the market to organically speak into that price.
Yeah. And this is a whole nother conversation, but it just, going back to that conservative list price, we can't underlist a house in this market.
That's right.
It's going to be driven up to what the buyers are willing to pay.
We
can overlist, but we can't underlist.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
With that information, please reach out to us if you have more questions, if you need great lending contacts, if you're looking for agents who actually know through years of vetted experience what they're doing and how to keep you in movement and traction and how to work a deal to its healthiest outcome. That's part of our heart for you. And we're so excited to just bring you this information as we're learning it, as we're experiencing it. Whether it's here or you're looking for a home across the country, we can refer you to an incredible agent across the country if you're not looking here. But we want the very best for you, and we hope that this helps accelerate your experience in the real estate world. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.